I am unprepared for today.
Perfect.
I don't have a coffee with me. I didn't have an afternoon snack. I forgot my headphones. It's just
a lot of struggles.
I mean, the show notes are solid.
You look like you're wearing headphones.
That's because these are your headphones.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I snuck into your office and I stole these.
That'll do it.
Oh boy.
We have 2 episode 124s.
Yeah, that's.
I'm on the older one.
Let's just not worry about that too much. Actually, all episodes from here on out are going to be episode 124. I just sound thinner in these headphones.
Yeah.
I know. If you don't want to use the hand-me-down headphones, bring your own headphones.
I mean, I don't think they're that bad. I think they're pretty good headphones.
They're probably fine. I just like my Bear Dynamics more.
Yep. Well, you're welcome to use them.
Thank you. Okay, we talked about this one, and then 123. No, that's what we talked about last week. And then 124 is today. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Math adds up.
There's not even links in this episode, Daniel. This is going to be an easy one.
Easy for you, not for me. Because one of us is going to have to add those links.
What?
Later.
No, we don't even need links.
Oh.
We're not going to talk about anything that requires links. This is an unlinkable episode.
Unlinkable. Just stands on its own on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Enough of this. Preamble.
Down to real business.
Down to real pre-show situation. I did it. I ran the whole marathon.
You did?
Yes.
Did you actually run the whole marathon?
I walked for 13 minutes out of the 5 hours and 15 minutes it took me to run it.
I guess percentage-wise, it's pretty low.
Yeah, percentage-wise, pretty low. I ran basically everything until I got to like mile 21, and then I was kind of in and out of it.
You had seemed uncertain of whether you would finish, and I didn't think there was any way you wouldn't finish, because how would you look yourself in the mirror if you started the marathon and didn't finish the marathon?
Yeah, you basically have to finish it.
Yeah.
I would say that it was a truly singular experience.
What does that mean?
Well, it's just I've never done anything like that before.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you have run a triathlon before, but I guess the marathon felt like just a huge step up in terms of difficulty.
I mean, it was a lot, and I've never gotten to that point of just like physical exhaustion where, I mean, at mile like 23 or so, you know, you're almost there. You're getting close. You can taste the finish, but you're just completely worn out and dead.
Yeah.
My legs hurt so bad for miles like 21 to 26. Just pain. Just hurt.
Just pain.
It just hurt. And walking hurt worse. And so it's like, what do you want? You want to walk
get the hurt over with sooner.
Yeah, just, pick your poison because you're going to be dealing with this, and you just have to push through. And it's like you can't really do anything else. You're just going to focus, and it's like I'm telling myself, I am running. I've always been running. I always will be running. just keep moving. And when I got to like late 23, mid 20, mile 23, I just started to feel like I was going to start crying. Like. No, not like, oh, my legs hurt, wah, or oh, I'm really sad. And I'm not like, woo, I'm almost done. Like nothing like that. It's just like the urge to cry. Just
interesting.
Like, it's the pure exhaustion and like endorphins and all of everything that has
like
been
emotional overload.
Yeah, that's like come from the last 5 hours of just running that's why I say it's like a singular experience, because I've never been so physically exhausted and pushing through the pain to the point where involuntarily I was like, I'm just going to start crying.
Yeah.
I didn't, but like a few tears. Yeah.
Few tears.
But like I didn't really hit the wall or anything. I don't think.
Good.
Maybe that's hitting the wall. I don't know. But like I got up the stupid hill at the end. I almost ran up the whole hill at mile 26. I got like 70% up it. And then like, woof, couldn't quite get there. But I was able to do like a 7-minute mile, the last 200 yards.
Yeah,
basically like sprint through the finish.
Nice.
I wasn't so dead that I couldn't do that. And that felt good.
Speaking of dead, wasn't the first guy that ran a marathon, didn't he drop dead?
Yeah.
Did you think about that at all?
No, not
Is that
really.
a concern for you?
Well, not a huge concern. I mean, he probably didn't have a proper nutrition plan.
He wasn't eating the little gels during the race. Didn't have people handing him cups of water.
Exactly. I got someone gave me a pickle. There was a lot of cookies.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of people handing out shots.
I heard somebody tell me about that, like tequila shot before the hill kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You take any of that?
Fireball whiskey.
How many of those did you have?
0. I would not have finished if I picked up an Oreo cookie or like a shot of Fireball whiskey. I would not have finished the marathon. No way. I was sticking to my nutrition plan, which I had 4 gels that I didn't finish. So maybe that's why my legs hurt.
How many is 4, like percentage wise? Is that like half of what you brought, or like
I brought
1/50th of what you brought?
More than I needed, probably. I brought 15.
That's quite a few.
Which was 1 for the start of the race, and then it was like every 30 minutes for the first hour, and then 2 every 30 minutes for the next 4 hours, up to hour 4, and then like after that it doesn't matter because your body's not going to metabolize it anyways. So
you were only running on like 75% power. Imagine if you had the rest of those gels.
Exactly, right? It feels like it's all a math game, which is kind of like the fun strategy bit of it. I know that I needed 4.5 liters of fluid, electrolytes, and water in order to make it through the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what they're like. I'm not going to carry that on me. And
do you carry any water on you, or do you just pick it up as you go?
I carried 500 milliliters of electrolyte water or solution.
So like, do you just chug that really early, or do you
I've saved that strategically because it had like 20 grams of carbs in it as well. And so whenever I got into late miles and I couldn't stomach another gel, that's what I worked on in order to like keep my glycogen properly topped up. But getting the water cups every mile from the volunteers, I was like, okay, how many ounces of water is in this water cup?
You're like pulling out your little notepad and writing it all down.
Like beforehand, I'm like, okay, I need between 130 and 150 ounces of water. If each cup is 6 ounces full for an 8-ounce cup, then that's going to be blah, blah, blah. I need to make sure to take 2, 2, 3 every mile. You kind of have to supercompute a little bit.
Apparently.
It's
and then
my strategy works.
There's other people like downing shots of Fireball.
Yeah, there's some people just doing shots and eating cookies.
Yeah,
not recommended.
Did you?
Maybe if I was a half marathoner.
Did you like end up in a pack with the same people the whole time, or not really?
Man, they had 3 corrals for the start, and then for the full marathoners, then all the halves started behind you, and people who run halves, man, especially like the people in the very beginning. I mean, they don't have half the distance to go. Well, they don't care. They're going to burn themselves out on the first mile, whatever. And so I'm just like trying to hold pace, and I'm getting passed by everyone because it's like all the half people who are going to be running faster than me regardless.
And for a moment, you're like, am I going to be in last place?
Like, not necessarily, because like you know that the people who are running slower than you aren't going to pass you, and the people who are running the same speed as you aren't going to pass you.
Yeah.
But it's a little discouraging running with all the half marathoners.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird psychological feeling.
Yeah, for like the first 2.5 hours, everyone's passing me.
Yeah.
But whenever I got to like 16, I finally had basically settled out. The people who had burned too hard at the beginning were starting to slow down, and then I was passing everybody. And I'm like, look at me go.
Yeah, maybe you should have calculated your water intake a little better.
Some guy was like, I don't know why my calves are cramping. Did you get enough electrolytes? I guess not. Sucker. Push him down.
You increase your time by smack talking to people as you pass them.
Yeah, exactly. I did to make sure to hit every single sign that said power up.
Oh,
you have to like tap the sign.
I'm sure that helped.
As a result, I ran 0.2 miles longer according to my GPS.
Oh.
Ran 26.4 miles.
Bonus.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nice. It sounds like this was all a pretty successful experience for you.
Yeah, actually, I should tie it into cameras. I wore the Insta360 Go.
How did you wear it?
3. I was wearing, it was like 39 to 45 degrees during the race. And so I wore a vest and then like a short sleeve shirt and shorts that were not short enough, might I complain.
Yeah, I mean, that would have shaved some time off for sure.
For sure. In the end, it was the right choice because I was wearing the vest and I didn't know if I was going to like I didn't want to have to put my bib on the vest and I needed it to be visible. I put it on my shorts, and if I had worn my 5-inch shorts, I wouldn't have been able to pin it to my shorts. Instead, I wore my 7-inch shorts, which always a regrettable decision. When running, short shorts are better shorts.
Good to know. So how did you wear the Insta360?
Sorry, right. That's what we're talking about.
Not your short shorts. Hopefully those two are not related. Continue.
No, there's like a front pocket on the vest. And so I took the magnet thing that you normally wear as a necklace and I put it in the back and then I magnetized it to the front.
Did it stay on there pretty well?
Yeah, it stayed on there great. It's very like swoosh, 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 swoosh. I should have used a different mode for like locking horizon or something. But overall, it was cool to be able to get the footage. I got the start of the race, and then I stopped recording clips after mile 7 with hopes of saving the battery for the final 100 meters. And it just didn't last.
No,
I thought
it's like you must not have you must not like fully put it to sleep or something.
Do you have to like do something to do that?
I don't know.
I've been having a hard time trying to figure out how to use that thing. One of the best things that I did was turn the light back on for knowing whether or not it's recording.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you're supposed to hold it or something to make it, I clearly did something wrong and I didn't have enough battery to record the end of the marathon or it doesn't stand by that long. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. At least you got something from it though.
Yeah, I got something. There was one, I did record like a really long clip that I did not intend to record. I was like, oh, I got all of First Street.
Yeah.
For 3 miles.
I mean, that's a pretty common problem with cameras. Like even when you're filming with a normal camera, sometimes you get that, you get like off sync with your button, and you're recording when you don't mean to be, and then you try and record a clip and you just stopped the previous clip.
And it's just additionally complicated by the fact that it's on you and you're running.
Yeah.
And not really it's not something you're trying to focus on doing.
Yeah. Like you're too busy calculating your electrolyte intake to be worrying about that battery. You're worrying about your battery, not its battery.
Exactly. I got to get that right.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
I don't think we've been talking about film enough.
Oh, you don't think so?
No.
It kind of actually has been a few weeks since we covered anything film related.
I finished my roll.
And this was from the Pentax, and it was the second roll you shot through it, right?
Yes.
And you started that roll a couple days before New Year's?
Like the New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Yeah, so that took me a little while. But I finally finished the roll, and I was going to develop it yesterday, but around 2:00, I just totally burned out.
Yeah. I was tired from that marathon.
Way more tired than I thought I was going to. Anyway, so I did combine my old developer and fixer into the same bottles so that they would become inert, and then I'm going to store them to dispose of properly. And
Which
I have
means
to
pouring them down the drain, right?
No.
It means digging a hole and pouring them outside?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
You said they're inert.
I'm still going to take them to the proper recycling facilities.
That's probably the right choice.
Yes. Anyway, I had to mix new chemicals now. And I think what I'm going to do is mix a half batch.
Yeah, it seems like your rate of film developing is pretty low.
I'm pretty sure I can just do that. I don't know, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to only mix a half bath and then save the rest of those for later. So I haven't developed them yet because there's a whole nother step now because I have to mix new chemicals.
Yeah. Sounds like a weekend thing to me.
Yeah, probably. But we were on the precipice. The other thing is I'm pretty sure I found the other roll that I have to develop because I put it into the black canister, which I took the Cinestill out of, and Fuji 400 doesn't come in black canisters. However, I was strategic about making sure that the tongue of the film didn't get fully rolled into it so that I could load it onto my Patterson tank film roll thing easier. But now it just looks like a new roll of film. And
so you don't know whether you're about to develop a completely unshot roll of film.
Yeah, I'm only like 80% confident that I found the correct roll.
Well, I guess you'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Film problems.
Whoops. Lessons learned is if not developing immediately and have a bunch of film next to undeveloped film or shot film next to undeveloped film, right on the film.
Yeah.
Maybe I use a Sharpie.
Yeah, or put a rubber band around it or something.
Something. Anyway, lessons learned.
Yeah. Well, once you get that film developed, maybe you'll be able to talk a little bit more about what you think of the photos from the Pentax
Yeah, I think
17.
that's we're all waiting on.
Yeah.
How bad is it?
All the listeners are waiting.
Well, there's gonna be plenty where I shot with the cap on.
Yes.
So, anywho, that's my film update.
Does the Pentax 17 have a removable lens cap?
Yeah.
It's a shame it's not like that Viltrox body cap lens we talked about with the little switch. That would have been kind of cool.
I think it's better for me to put a UV filter on there and then just lose the cap and never put a cap on it.
Yeah. That would probably be a good move. It would fit the role of the camera better.
And that way I stop accidentally taking pictures with a cap on.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you'll. Do you have a guess on how many pictures you took that way?
Oh, there's probably like 5 or 10.
It's quite a few.
Well, it's out of 144 total. So there's that. Anyway, we shot an event this past weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like we always have some camera learnings, but maybe this time we had a few more things that came up.
Yeah, I thought there was maybe some interesting things to talk about. This was your first real shoot with the S9. You used it on the gimbal. I had tried a few different carry solutions out. Again, I feel like I'm always experimenting with how I'm managing my cameras. And so, I don't know, maybe some interesting feedback from all that.
Yeah, sounds good. Where do you want to start?
Okay, so this is the first time I've shot like a decent amount of video with the Helios. That's the Helios 44-2. The person we were shooting for was like, just get artsy with it.
Like, say no more.
You got it. Not a problem. And so I pulled out the Helios 44-2 and oh boy, is it way nicer to shoot with a manual lens for video than any of these electronic lenses.
Really? Why do you say that?
Like just focusing, just the simple act of manually focusing that lens was so pleasant.
I guess if you're shooting video and you're not using autofocus, where you're going to be manually focusing anyway, focusing with a truly manual lens is just you clearly have a more direct connection with what's happening than you do with like a focus by wire.
I feel like it doesn't matter how good the focus by wire is and whether or not you have it set to linear or anything like that, it just doesn't feel the same as a true manual focus where you just, there's no delay. It's like exactly what you're expecting with the turn.
Well, and plus, like, if you were to turn the camera off and back on or whatever, it's always going to be exactly the same. Like, it's not going to have moved focus.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I haven't used every system and every lens, but it feels a little bit to me like this is a Russian lens from whatever the 60s. And with all the technical advances that we've done in photography and the linear motors, manual focusing is still just better with manual lenses.
That's an interesting realization.
Yeah. So that was cool. And I don't know. It was a, I guess realization is probably the most accurate word. So I was happy to be able to shoot with it, and it was a pleasure to use.
And you were shooting it with your new speed booster.
Correct, right. But I did shoot it on the XT5 and I was shooting 4K 60, so there was a 1.17 crop. And so I wasn't getting the full experience of the edges of the lens.
It had quite a bit of character though in the footage.
Yep. And then and that was fun too. The out of focus stuff, it just kind of like layers a little bit. It's not perfectly out of focus. You kind of get some diffraction with most of your out of focus stuff, and you get all the cat's eyes, and it was fun. I was really happy with the look that I got, even with the cheap speed booster, and it was great to shoot with.
I honestly did think it looked pretty good, like in terms of what we were going for, and it was like it looked cool without being like way over the top. Like I feel like sometimes those effects can be too much, and it felt like it was just enough to where it's clearly not a normal lens, but you could still see what was going on. Like it wasn't just a total mess.
Right. And so with the shoot that we were doing, I wanted to be able to quickly switch between long zoom, standard zoom, and a fast prime for low light type stuff and low depth of field type shots.
A lot of lenses.
And so there was 3 lenses I wanted to be able to quickly use, and I was trying to once again find my best solution for that. And maybe this is a good aside here. One of the people who was helping us shoot is a wedding photographer, and it was fun to talk to her about kind of her gear and that sort of stuff. And she shot with Sony's, and so it was like, kind of talking to her about her lens choices, and she was shooting with like an 85 and a 35.
Yeah, 2 primes.
And she was like, yeah, I just don't like zooms, and I shoot weddings with primes. I was like, this is crazy. And she had one of those like harness type straps, and I was like, oh, is that a moneymaker? And she knew exactly what I was talking about. And she's like, no, those are too thin. This is a different kind. It's thicker, a little more worn in. It was very fun to talk to her about wedding photography and shooting and that sort of stuff.
And then she said that, I think I made a joke about it gets worn in when you sweat on it. And she was like, yeah, like it has a noticeable smell to it in the summer. Like you walk in a room and people notice.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, so she had her 2 Sony cameras with an 85 and a 35, and sometimes she swaps the 35 for the 135.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that she wasn't using a 24-70 or 7200.
Yeah, that's what I think about when I think of wedding photographers is the 24-70, 7200, and 2 cameras in a harness type strap, and that's the uniform, and that's not how she rolls. Yeah. And I thought it was kind of awesome, and I felt seen.
Yeah, her pictures are really good too. She's very talented, and I almost feel like shooting on primes, in that type of situation requires a little bit more experience. I won't necessarily say skill, because some of it's just like knowing where to go get the shot. I guess it's both experience and skill, but I feel like most of us go to a zoom for that, but I think primes take a little bit more.
I think to an extent, if you're watching a room and moving through a room, and you work with those set focal lengths, what the framing is going to be at a certain distance before you put the camera up to your eye, because you're so used to it.
That's a good point.
And at that point, you're not having to zoom to set the frame. You already know what the frame is going to be, and so you're just pulling up the camera and taking the shot. And so maybe it makes you faster. Maybe you have to do a little more foot movement and a little more cropping to get it exactly right. But maybe it speeds her up and she gets better images because of it.
I mean, you definitely get a wider aperture, which, in dark room, that's a big advantage.
Yeah, that is a big advantage.
On this topic, I know you're about to talk about your setup. For the primes, I was curious if you wished you had used the 75 1.2.
If I had the 75 1.2 with me, I would have used it instead of the lenses that I used.
I should have mentioned it because I had it in my bag. Could have used it.
Yeah, I guess I probably should have assumed that you had it. You shot mostly with the S9 on the gimbal.
Yeah, I did like 75 or 80% that, and then 20% with the Fuji.
Yeah, so I used the zooms what I found to work best for me. So I tried having my Peak Design like satchel with the X-T5 and 1 lens in it, and then a lens on my X-H2S on a strap. And like I tried to make that work, and I wasn't using a standard camera strap this time. I was using one of those like sling type straps.
Yeah, I noticed that you had that.
And the sling strap was working out great, but dealing with the bag and the other camera just was not working. And what I like finally landed on for this thing was like belt clip with like the Peak Design capture clip on my belt with the X-T5 and a prime lens, and then just the zoom lens on X-H2S, and just doing that, and then setting my other lens kind of off to the side for whenever I needed it ultimately.
Yeah. And
I ended up being really happy with either like the 56-1.2 or the 44-2 Helios on my X-T5, and then the 50-140 on my X-H2S. And I know I was like, here's my low light stuff, here's my telephoto stuff.
Yeah.
I was really able to do that mostly because I knew you were shooting wide on a gimbal. And so we kind of split the work of like, I was focusing on getting all the tight shots and you were focusing on getting the wide shots.
That really helps when you have multiple people shooting an event, because if you're trying to do everything, it's hard.
Yeah. For some of it, in order when I did need that second zoom, like quickly available, I have a little like chalk bag for climbing that I bought that's like fuzzy that I'll wear around my belt, and I'll stick one lens in there if I need to just have it with me quickly to access. I know that's kind of a weird hack, but that's
I have an actual lens bag that's like, it's very similar to that, but it's just made for lenses. And I use it some, but I find in situations like that, whenever I have the choice, I would rather not be fumbling with changing lenses when I'm kind of like out in the field, like in the room. Like I'd rather find a like home base that I can put my stuff down
Right.
and go swap over there. But it just kind of depends on what you're doing. Sometimes that's not realistic.
I can never make 2 cameras work, and this was the first time shooting something that I was really able to finally get into a groove and figure out a way to use 2 cameras. I feel like using 2 cameras seems like an obvious thing for an event photographer to have and use, but it feels like it takes a minute to really figure it out, and you kind of have to just do it in the field live and like get the reps and practice and practice and practice until it actually makes sense.
The way you're describing that you did it is similar to what has worked for me, which is one camera on a strap and the other camera on the capture clip on the belt. And I think I prefer that because whenever I have 2 cameras on straps, it just feels like I have a lot of stuff swinging around.
Yeah, yep.
And I just don't like the way that I feel very encumbered doing that. But if I have one on the clip, that kind of feels out of the way. And so I when I did it, I kind of ended up, that was just like my secondary camera that I would use for specific shots. And my primary camera, I had 2 lenses available and I would kind of swap as I needed to. And so that one's on the strap. But then if I wanted to get some kind of special shot with the other camera, I could just, drop the one and pick the one up off the clip. And that worked for me. But I mean, obviously a lot of wedding photographers do the 2 strap thing.
Yeah. The last time I tried to do this, I think it just didn't work for me at all. I gave up and I went to 1 camera, and that was like so much better. But I think that my main issue there was that I was trying to shoot with flash. Last time I dealt with trying to do the whole 2 camera thing. And
that's a whole extra piece of equipment that you're dealing with.
Right. And like, you don't want to move if you're not like holding the things that are strapped to you. You kind of hold them and then you move and then you stop and then you pick up and shoot. But having a flash hanging off your camera off the hot shoe makes it even more cumbersome. And I'm really realizing the answer is to use a wireless like flash sync module and then wear the flash on your head.
There you go. Yeah. Don't put it on a stand somewhere in the room. That's a ridiculous idea. Just wear it on your head.
I did wear the Insta360 Go on my hat during this event and got a lot of footage that was like first person view I don't know if this is going to be useful or not. Was not, but was fun.
It depends on what you need it for. One time I did that when I was filming an event. I put it in the you did it on your hat, right? I did it on the chest mount, kind of like right below my chin, because I thought that would be a better angle.
Right.
And it's kind of neat in terms of like, here's a first person perspective of what it looks like to shoot an event. And like, even though it's maybe not like good enough to use for anything real, I actually thought it's kind of good training. If somebody was going to do something like this, to have a video like that you can show them and say like, this is sort of like where I'm standing and how I'm moving around and like kind of what I'm looking at. And I can see that being useful.
There is a YouTuber. I can't talk and write the word photographer, and I can't remember his name. It's like Tyler something.
I mean, I've definitely seen people do this where they put a GoPro on top of their camera or something.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm going to shoot an entire wedding, and you can just watch it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's just like super, super, super useful though, of actually getting to shadow somebody else while they work and kind of learn tips and tricks. I actually enjoy watching those kind of videos.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something that you and I should think about doing sometime, because we shoot a lot of events for our church. And so it's in like some of the same environments and stuff, and I have, several events like in the same, rooms or buildings or whatever. And so, especially in that situation, it's actually pretty good as a training resource, because you can show somebody, in this particular place, here are some good spots to stand, and like, here's some things that you can think about or whatever. But even just in a general sense, whether you're in that, like watching the things that wedding photographer guy does, I kind of feel like that's one of the biggest things people could learn about event photography is not what to do with your camera, but kind of like where to go and when to move positions and like how to do that sort of thing. And that's kind of something that you just pick up over time doing it. But I know when I don't
necessarily think about if someone's like, oh, how do you do this? Or what's your strategy for a blah? You don't really think about how to like teach somebody that if you're trying to train them and that sort of stuff. So
yeah. Like I don't remember. I would have loved to have had a resource like that when I started, and I just kind of had to figure it out. But like, now that feels like one of the most important parts of it.
Maybe it's not Tyler. I'm trying to remember the name of this guy now. And Taylor Jackson. That's the guy.
There we go. Taylor Jackson.
Live feedback. Okay. Yeah, so that was all good. I think that was everything I really wanted to talk about mostly for this for myself was kind of the strategy on carrying it, our wedding photographer friend, and then the Helios being cool.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple more things that we kind of both had experience with, but I guess I can talk about the S9 stuff. So,
Sure.
I got the S9 recently, and we knew we had this event coming up and felt like a great opportunity to kind of try it out. And what I was really excited to use it for was on the gimbal, because for a lot of the stuff in this event, we really like the gimbal shots. They give, good movement, and it's just kind of a different perspective than what we get with all the handheld stuff. But it's always been a pain, if I try and move my main camera between holding and on the gimbal, you're having to like rig out the gimbal, and that's just kind of a mess. And plus, like, my camera setup's pretty heavy. Like, even if I take it out of the cage and stuff, by the time you get a lens on there and all that, like it's pretty heavy. And so the S9 seemed interesting just because it's like a lighter weight camera that's still really capable for video. And overall, it worked great. So I used it with the 20-60 kit lens, and it balanced really easily. It made for a nice lightweight setup. And I thought the footage we got from it came out really good.
Yeah. And you shot mostly with autofocus.
AFC. Yeah,
right.
just set on zone, kind of centered in the frame.
You ran into some challenges with the USB-C port being on the grip side, and so you had to find a right angle cable in order to be able to use the wheel for focus on the Ronin.
Once I got that, so I had to get a right angle USB-C cable. Once I got that, it was great. I actually didn't use the gimbal has a record button, which was the main thing I wanted, but it also has a thumb wheel or a finger wheel. And I wasn't using it for focus, but I used it for ISO.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So that way I could roll my ISO, not while you're recording, but once you stop your recording, you roll the ISO up or down to change the exposure for the next shot. And I mean, that's really cool. Like, you don't really have to configure anything. You can just plug it into the camera, and then on the gimbal, you set what parameter you want it to adjust. And it just all kind of happens electronically. Like, you can adjust focus with that if you want to. I just didn't do it, but it all integrates really well, and the S9 has surprisingly good video features for being a little travel camera, and I thought it worked out great.
Yeah, it seemed like the perfect fit for what we're shooting. It was cool to be able to see you get a lot of use out of it. You didn't have any overheating issues, you didn't have any really major issues with focusing. It gave you all the codecs that you need. You didn't run out of battery or anything.
Yeah. I mean, especially once I got the USB-C cable, the gimbal charges the camera. And so, it all very easy to use, but just that whole experience was really enjoyable, and it definitely made me kind of realize what I've missed about Panasonic, just in terms of the camera menus being really simple to use, and it providing, a lot of video features that honestly we don't get on the Fujis, stuff like the luminance spot meter and vector and wave scope, vector scope and waveforms. Like, it's just, like, it's nice to see a camera that actually prioritizes video in a way that the Fuji stuff seems not to.
For sure.
And it reminded me a lot of what we talked on this show about how Fuji's like so close with this really good camera, but they just aren't quite there on the software. And that was kind of really driven home for me by this little, retro looking travel camera from Panasonic having like way more of those features than my, top end Fuji hybrid video camera.
I mean, they released waveforms for the GFX like a year ago, so maybe one day that'll come to the XH2S.
Maybe one day.
Maybe the XH3S.
We did have to match the footage. That's what I thought you might want to talk about.
Yeah,
too.
that was the next thing. But as far as whenever you did shoot without connecting the USB to the gimbal, like, do you have an idea of kind of how long you shot and what your battery was after?
Not really. I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, it just seemed like the battery was not, like, it wasn't depleting very much at all. It really didn't seem like a problem. But I mean, also, I wasn't recording super long clips. I mean, this is an event. We were making it for an event recap, so I wasn't doing 15-minute recordings. It was like 30 seconds here, 45 seconds there. So
even so, like, camera on, doing a lot of recordings, that can't really stress it. So what'd you record in? Did you just shoot in like standard video color profile?
Yeah,
or did you use a LUT or what?
Standard profile. a lot of the other cameras that were in play during this event were Lumix S5 2s. So, same sensor, going to be the same profiles. So I just used a standard profile to match. Did not shoot in log, just shot standard. If this had been a project that you and I were editing, I would have shot in log.
Right,
it wasn't.
So it was a really fast delivery. So, and then we shot with the Fujis in Provia with +2 color.
Yeah.
And from the final output, it seemed close enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I watched like the final recap video and it was not jarring to me at all, the cutting between the footage.
Yeah,
so I was pretty happy with the color boost in Provia to kind of get it a little closer, because those Lumix colors are so saturated.
It was kind of a useful thing that I have both cameras, because I was able to just turn them on, point them at the same object, and kind of play with settings and see like which is the closest film simulation, what adjustments make sense.
And obviously we weren't trying to like perfectly match it. We would have spent a lot more time if it super mattered.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was a close enough kind of thing, because the cuts are so different from thing to thing to thing to thing that the reds not being exactly the same shade of red, or the skin tones being slightly off, or the white balance being slightly different doesn't really become obvious.
Yeah,
and so we could kind of like
less
get
than
away
it would
with
for like an interview or something.
Yeah, versus like if we tried to shoot Eterna and they were trying to match Eterna to the standard profile out of the Lumix, would have been out of control. But
why is all so green?
It reminds me of whenever I watch any media output from McLaren, it's all looks like ungraded log. And they like just mix it in with other footage, and it just looks bad.
Weird.
And I don't know if like that's what they're going for, because they keep producing more and more footage. They make so much money, Daniel.
Yeah, hire one person.
Like how they have to know. They have to know. Like, come on, just grab that contrast slider. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's weird.
Anyway,
I don't know what to say.
It just looks bad.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people who like really artsy photos don't like super punchy colors.
To be clear, I was talking about the McLaren F1 team.
I figured you are. I happen to like saturation, and I like very saturated colors, and I find that the Lumix profile is sort of what I like out of a camera. And as cool as I think it is having the different Fujifilm simulations and stuff, I look at that standard Lumix profile and it's just like, yeah, this is normally how I edit photos to look like this.
It's just what you want, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, it may be wrong in your opinion, but it's what I like.
It's just totally fine. It's just really hard to match, because it's just so punchy.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this isn't even the vivid profile. I pull up a vector scope and it's like out of control.
Well, that's the nice thing about being able to shoot in log. And on the S9 or most modern Lumix cameras, you can just apply a real-time LUT. So, the other option, like when we shoot stuff, would be to make a transform LUT and apply that to the Lumix and just get it to match the Fuji stuff.
Yeah, I do want to play around with that a little bit for the next shoot. So maybe more there. Anyway, enough about that.
Yep.
Let's talk about this other thing.
All right.
So we have taken on some photo editing work and are basically kind of like working through, all right, here's a bunch of raw files, edit them, and then we're going through doing the edits and then delivering final edited photos.
And to be clear, this is a sort of like a recurring thing. It's not, this isn't a one-time task.
Yeah. So
we need like a workflow.
Right. You need a workflow for, incoming photos that are going to be edited and parsed and all that sort of stuff. And so I've been trying to sort out how best to deal with this. And I know the correct answer, but I don't like the correct answer. And so
does the correct answer involve using a computer?
Yes. What's a computer, Daniel? So some like it's going to be a lot of photos over the course of say 3 or 4 months, and that may be 500 gigs of photos.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Thousands of photos. They're raw files.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Like it's working through a lot. I don't want that in my photo library.
Yeah.
I don't want that in my Lightroom library. I don't want to pay for the storage for it. I don't want to deal with it. Obviously, having something like, Lightroom Classic or whatever might be good. And you can kind of like deal with the catalog there. What I haven't...
Now, let me ask you before you go on. So is an option to temporarily have them in your library and then just delete the, we deliver it, and just delete them when you're done? Or is that like, does that not work with your backup workflow? Like,
So,
are they still going to end up in the system?
So something to kind of, I didn't think about the fact that they will end up in the system.
More to stress about. That's going to keep you up tonight.
No, that means I'm going to have to do something later.
They're already in the system.
Jeez, I didn't think about that part. Crap. Okay, well, we're going to figure this all out right now. We're going to figure it all out right now. So, if you edit them in Lightroom, you want to preserve the raw edits. So like you need it in some sort of catalog or whatever. And something that I learned as a feature of Lightroom and that I haven't really done too much with is working with sidecar files. And that's a .xmp extension, which has the same name as the file that you're editing, and it stores all of the edits within that file. And so you're not actually making any permanent changes to the raw. You're just telling the software like what changes to make whenever you view it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I learned is that if you have a raw file with an XMP sidecar file and you just put them in a directory, a lot of things will just know what to do with it. You put those in a drive location and you open it up in your web browser and you like open up the raw file, it'll know what to do with it.
That's pretty cool. So it's like a standardized format that a lot of software uses.
Yeah. And so if you have like a Lightroom or something, you can import photos with the XMP files and bring your edits along.
That's cool.
And so if you're trying to move between editing things and you want to like get your raws out of Lightroom but preserve all of the things that you've done to them, the sidecar thing seems like a pretty good option.
Yeah.
And what I learned is that if you're using Lightroom not Classic, you can now go to any directory on your file system on your computer and then just edit those photos. And it will drop an XMP file next to them, and they can just be there, and you can edit them. You don't ever have to import them into your library at all. You can just do that work. The XMP saves it, and you're good to go.
Pretty cool.
And so that's the correct solution for this, is do the work on my computer and use just Finder to, here's my directory of files. This is where they are. And I can flag things to my heart's content in Lightroom, delete files, they'll go into the recycle bin and all that sort of stuff. I know I'm mixing Mac and PC metaphors, but you can do all the sorting and work that you need to in Lightroom, but then everything is just saved as kind of a standalone thing that I can then archive whenever we're done.
This sounds great. That's what I'm going to do, but it's not what you're going to do because you don't like using a computer.
Sometimes using a computer feels like too much like work. And even though you only get like 60 to 70% of the Lightroom features using the iPad, I kind of would just rather use my iPad.
You do get the pencil though.
Exactly. I just want to like sit back and work on some photos.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I'm like, how do I do this? Can I do the same thing with the iPad version and like point it to a directory on the iPad with XMP files? No. It will only look at things in photos. Okay, well, can I like import the files into photos with the sidecar on my iPad and then look at just the internal photo library and then export it in some way? No, you can't do that either. You can't even import the raw files into photos on the iPad.
So that's some of the 30% functionality that's missing from iPad Lightroom.
I'm like, I don't know why you couldn't just do it. There's a Finder file extension thing, and then you have the same Lightroom, basically the same Lightroom app. They're both on essentially the same processor. Come on.
Yeah,
it's
frustrating.
Like, I'm like, okay, well, maybe what I do is I import them into my library temporarily, which is what I did for the last grouping of photos, which now I'm realizing means they are in my backup workflow.
Yeah, because you have other stuff that is taking that and backing it up, which you've talked about on this podcast before.
Yeah, so for some reason that didn't occur to me to the fact that I was like, oh, I can just put these into Lightroom, do my edits, export the raw files with the XMP sidecar file to a directory, and then I'll just archive that into wherever we save our archives for the 12 months that we want to keep them on hand.
Yeah.
And then we will delete them after that. But so I'll just save them to the Synology when I'm done and then delete them out of Lightroom. The problem is they've now downloaded to my auxiliary computer, which is saving them to my Synology, which is getting backed up to Backblaze.
Yep.
And so, now they're just like in the workflow.
Like all of this has happened, and the next step is that you're going to turn your TV on and have it going through one of your Google Photo albums, and you're going to be seeing these random pictures.
Dang it, that is going to happen. No.
So, a possible easy solution.
I have to delete them out of my Google Photos library.
Do you have any part in this backup workflow where you could insert something that says, you know, if these photos are in an album that starts with whatever text, don't include it?
No.
That's a shame.
But I don't even know how I would do that. The whole idea is that if I import it into Lightroom, it is now to be a part of the photo library, and then Lightroom on this other computer is set to download all the files for Lightroom,
but like you don't have
to a directory.
You don't have any way on that download to say download everything except for blank.
It's a checkbox in Lightroom that's like download to this directory all original files.
Yep.
So
that's gonna be something to figure out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go after I export these. I'm gonna have to go delete them everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to figure out what to do like longer term, like next time you edit a batch of photos. I
don't know what to do. Maybe the answer is use a different software to edit them on the iPad.
Use Affinity Photo or something.
Maybe. I don't know. Is Affinity Photo any good?
I think it should be. I mean, the other Affinity things are. I don't know. I mean, it's saying like that is an option. Use a different software.
We have a Lightroom preset we're supposed to use.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out how to pull that over into something else.
It's all too complicated. Mm-hmm. And the easy answer is just do it on the computer. But I don't like that answer.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating that like you said, it's, you know, the iPad has the same processor, it's the same software, maybe the same company. Like, why can't it do this thing? It's silly that they left that out.
Maybe the answer is to close Lightroom on that other computer that is in the backup workflow.
Pause your backup workflow.
Yeah,
that feels kind of risky though.
And then unpause it when I'm done.
That feels ripe for disaster.
Yeah, maybe. I forgot about the whole.
You thought you had such a nice system figured out. Now you.
I was like, I could just do this, but it's a good thing we talked about it because now I got to go fix a bunch of things.
Yep.
Yikes.
What if you just didn't fix it? What if you just embraced the chaos?
No.
And your photo workflow just had all these other things.
No, I don't think Google Photos is uploading RAWs. I think I have that unchecked. So they shouldn't show up in my Google Photos library, but they are on the Synology and they need to be deleted.
And they'll be on Backblaze and all that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Probably don't need them in all those places.
No. No, I don't.
This is the downside to having a complex photo backup workflow.
Well, it works for me, Dan.
It did until now.
Everything's backed up. It's just I'm not used to doing significant amounts of editing for not me.
I mean, it's got to be a common problem for people though. Like anybody, like our wedding photographer person, you know, like anybody who's doing client work probably has their own photos and client photos.
Could I just have a separate Lightroom account? Can I create like 2 Adobe IDs and then have 2 Lightrooms?
Maybe that's the answer. If you can have a separate Lightroom library.
But then would I have to pay for 2 different licenses for Lightroom?
Do you pay for any licenses for Lightroom?
Yes.
I thought you said you didn't for some reason.
I pay for the 1 terabyte.
Oh, okay.
And just Lightroom, not Photoshop.
Yeah, I mean, because Lightroom isn't free.
No.
So, yeah, I think you would have to.
Or, I mean, can I pay for it 1 time and then just have 2 catalogs? I don't think you can have 2 catalogs on the iPad. It's not the same as Classic where you can just have a bunch of catalogs. Because I think that's what people do who are real photographers, unlike me. They will have, here's a catalog for this shoot, or here's a catalog for this work or this year, and then they use albums and all this sort of thing to kind of make it all work. Well, this is
why I was wondering if you could create I don't remember what the term is, collection, album, whatever, and somehow in the iPad select to say don't sync this one. I wondered if there's a way you could do that.
Yes, but then I have to figure out a way to load them onto the iPad, not through the cloud, which could get a little weird.
Well, but what if you loaded them on a T5, a USB drive, and plug that in? I wonder if you can import them into that album that is set to not sync. I don't know.
This is all just way too complicated. This is so hard to solve.
Yeah.
And I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to solve.
I feel like you're going to come back next week and have a perfect solution to this.
I think that if I was still using my really terrible, Lightroom Lightroom Classic workflow.
The thing where you had like OneDrive in the mix and all that.
No, I still have that in the mix. I'm still using OneDrive. Come on, do we need to recant my entire backup workflow?
No, let's not.
I was previously using Lightroom Classic, and in order to make it such that all of my photos were available through Lightroom Mobile, I was using the smart previews and I was syncing only smart previews by Lightroom Classic. But I had to go and like make them all available in a certain way on the computer. And so there was like this weird, I had to go to the computer in order to make them available on my iPad.
Yeah.
And if I was like on vacation or something and I loaded a bunch of photos onto my iPad, I would have to then download those from Lightroom Cloud into Lightroom Classic and then delete them from the cloud in just the right incantation so that they weren't taking up my storage, but then upload them back again as smart previews so that they didn't count against my total 20 gigabytes of storage. It was just a mess.
Yeah.
But I could go back to doing that. Because if I was using smart previews and syncing, that might work. Like actually, I think that maybe if I signed up for the version of this that includes Lightroom Classic from Adobe, I could use Lightroom Classic with smart previews to do the editing and then have everything that's work related siloed into Lightroom Classic, and the smart previews shouldn't download into my backup workflow.
Yeah. So that's
maybe
another option,
that's the answer.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, like if you need to buy a different plan or something, it's a business expense. You know, it's just like you factor that into doing the work and it's just part of the cost.
I hate all of it. I think that I went through all this effort a year ago to switch to Lightroom Cloud and like redo my whole backup workflow. And now I feel like I'm looking at the end of it and I'm going to have to figure out a whole different solution to move away from Adobe.
This is an interesting new constraint that you didn't have before.
I just don't know. I don't even know what I would do with a non-Adobe solution.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I know there's other options out there, but it just seems hard.
Well, I mean, you've gotten used to Lightroom. You know how to quickly edit in that software. That would be a pain to figure out how to do that somewhere else.
They just keep getting more, like they keep pressing on us more and more with the pricing.
Yeah.
And I do get a lot of value out of Lightroom. And like, I think that currently like, $10 a month or whatever I'm paying is fine for what I get out of it. Like I'm happy with that exchange, but what was it recently? They got rid of one of the photo plans, then they made the other photo plan more expensive and essentially like boxed out existing customers into paying more to get what they already had. And it was just kind of sleazy.
It really feels like they're just squeezing and squeezing on that monthly pricing. And I mean, it's also the reason that haven't really seriously thought about using Premiere in a long time. It's like, how am I going to pay $20 a month for this one video software when I can get Final Cut Pro for a one-time purchase? I can get Resolve for a one-time purchase. Like, I get why they're doing it. It's obviously great for them for it to be on a subscription, and for businesses, subscriptions can be good. But for a hobbyist or somebody who's not, like a big business doing this stuff, it's expensive.
Yeah, it can get expensive, and I don't know. I do feel like I do wonder when am I going to get to the point where I just can't really pay the Adobe tax anymore and I want to move on to something else. And I don't know what those options are going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Apple has their Photos app, but I feel like Lightroom is, easy to use and works well. And I don't want to switch off of it either. I
don't need to get more entrenched into Apple stuff. I'm trying to get out of Apple stuff and then switch back to Android.
Yeah. I'll believe that when I see it.
It's going to happen, Daniel. The whatever the S25 can shoot log now.
Yeah, I saw that. And Blackmagic camera supports Android. And
see, there's no reason for me to even have an iPhone anymore.
It's all catching up.
Yeah,
and here you are with your iPhone.
What's interesting just happened after. My sweat destroyed my last one. I had to emergency get a new phone.
I mean, the biggest problem for you is that the iPad is so good, and I feel like you can use an iPad without an iPhone and without a Mac, but it's just like the ecosystem.
I do really like leaving my phone somewhere in the house and just having my iPad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is my home phone.
What year is it?
You just got my big old iPad that I carry around. Anyway, so I don't know what to do here. This was a topic that I think I had on here for last week that I'm like, Daniel, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I solve this?
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't have a solution.
Well, I think I just introduced more problems for you, really.
Yeah, you did.
But I mean, for me, it's a lot simpler because I don't, we've talked, I don't have a backup workflow and it's all just like in shambles for me. So for me, I can just import stuff into the Lightroom library, edit it, and then remove it from the Lightroom library later. And that just works just fine. And I'm used to doing photo editing on a computer. I have done it on an iPad, like on trips and stuff, and I like that. But I still feel like I'm a little bit faster on the computer, just, click the mouse and stuff.
So are you're importing them into Lightroom now?
Yeah.
To do this stuff?
I mean, I've only done it, this is pretty new for us. I've only done it a couple of times, but that's what I've done so far.
And then when you're done, you're going to export with the sidecar file for archiving, or you're just going to be like, everything, all the work that I did is gone?
I don't know. I was thinking about just throwing it all away, but I guess if we've made an agreement that we're going to keep that stuff for, a year or whatever, then I'll need to save those edits. So I
think contracts say 6 months, but yeah. I would keep the edits. Like, inevitably, someone's going to come back and say, "Oh, hey, what this picture here? Can we make this change or something?" And boy, sure would stink if you have to just start over.
I guess I'll do those sidecar files then, but
I think you only save the ones that were the final versions.
Yeah. It's not like we need all the input photos. No, just the outputs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's probably what I'll do.
Anyways, cool. I don't necessarily want to get into your horrible Lightroom workflow today,
well, because there's not much to talk about. I don't really have one.
It's still just totally broken.
Yeah. I feel like for me, the missing piece is that what I want to do is make the Apple photo library my source of truth, because I like Apple stuff. I don't have any plans to switch away from it. And then it feels like it would just seamlessly work with all my stuff and would be convenient.
I still think that's the right choice for you as well.
But the piece that's missing is that I don't have a good way to back it up locally. I want to back it up to the Synology. And so what I need is a computer that can kind of constantly, I need a computer with enough hard disk space that can hold a local copy of those files so that I can have it on there and back it up that way.
Couldn't you just get a Mac Mini and an external hard drive?
Yeah, that's what I need to do. I just haven't done that. And I feel like once I do that, I'll be able to just set that up as my conduit from Apple Photos into the Synology, and then everything from there is pretty simple. But I just haven't done that yet.
And then you can just start bringing in all those JPEGs from your S9 into Apple Photos.
It'd be perfect.
It'd be great.
That's what I'm going to do.
You can use your Apple TV or whatever to show your photos on your TV.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start editing things in Apple Photos.
I mean, you could.
I could.
They have a round trip thing where you can edit in other apps, but still in Photos.
Huh. Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'll probably look into doing that, and maybe it'll be interesting to figure out what are the pros and cons of that approach versus what you're doing. Because it's a lot simpler, but it's also locking in more to Apple. So I don't know which is better.
It's all just too hard.
Yeah.
I have one more thing. Can we talk about one more thing?
I guess so.
Okay. So in the same vein as far as Lightroom and working with photos and this whole thing that we have to solve, I've been wondering if I should start converting to DNG.
So what is DNG? I've seen it. I just don't remember exactly.
It's digital negative format or something. Digital negative.
That's what the G stands for, format.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
G stands for format.
Yep.
But it's the open source-ish Adobe version of RAW.
Okay.
And whenever you're working with Fuji RAW files, like the RIFs in Lightroom, it still isn't quite as good as working with a DNG or a bare sensor type RAW file.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when you apply sharpening, it applies it, essentially it makes the grain sharper.
Yeah.
It just kind of, I don't even know how else to explain it. It intensifies the detailing around the grain to sharpen rather than really sharpening the edges of the photo and what's in the photo.
I mean, it's kind of like the wormy issue that used to happen on the old X-Trans sensors, right? It's just not the algorithms aren't really made.
No, not necessarily. Well, sort of, but not even. It's really more just it can't quite figure it out.
Mm.
And what I've noticed is if I take a file and I do any of the new upscaling or AI noise reduction and let it convert it to a DNG, the sharpening is much better. I can get a better result out of the sharpening adjusting versus where if I'm editing just straight up RAF files, I will often take the sharpening down to basically zero.
Huh, that's
and I will
interesting.
use the export sharpening feature to apply the sharpening on export for whenever it's doing the conversion, because that tends to result in a cleaner sharpening adjustment than just applying the slider in Lightroom on the RAF files.
Interesting.
And dealing with the Fuji RAWs with Lightroom has always kind of been a bit of an annoyance. They're supported, but I wish that it maybe did some things a little better than other things.
Yeah.
Though generally it does match the film simulations well enough so that if you, it's not exactly the same, but like if you shoot in RAWs and you go to camera matching profiles in Lightroom, like you can pick classic chrome or classic neg or like Eterna or whatever. And they're close enough that I will use those for editing. I still do prefer the out of camera JPEGs compared to those profiles, but only slightly.
Yeah.
And what I'm kind of wondering is like, what if I considered a workflow where I just converted all of my RAFs to DNG before I imported them into Lightroom?
Oh, because then you'd be able to use those things like the sharpening and all the AI tools, and it would work more the way you expect.
Yep. And supposedly, if you use the correct DNG converter, which not all DNG converters are made the same, but I think if you use the Adobe one, it is a true lossless conversion from one RAW format to another RAW format. And you're not actually demosaicing and then making it into something else. You are essentially just converting it from one RAW type to another.
Yeah, changing the way the data is stored.
And what I'm trying to figure out is if that is truly a lossless conversion. And I mean, I would be so worried if it wasn't, right? Because I'm
you only throw those raw files away.
Yeah, that's why I shot all those bits, man. I want them. I want all them bits. And then I'm like, is there a way to do a DNG conversion on the iPad? Since that's like my main whatever. And so do I have to find an app that will do true lossless DNG conversion? And how hard is that going to be to find?
How do you normally get things onto the iPad to edit? Are you importing them on the iPad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll plug a card reader in, I'll open up Lightroom and I'll import from device.
You would need to be able to do it on the iPad.
Yeah, exactly. So woof. It adds like a whole extra step. And I don't know if I should have done more research before talking about this on the podcast, but even still, it's kind of wanted to get some of your thoughts here. If I do a DNG conversion with the Fuji files, do I lose the information that tells it my camera profiles? So will I not be able to change the film simulations in Lightroom?
And it feels like,
and therefore kind of like losing some of the advantage of shooting in Fuji for the first place?
You're just going to have to experiment with it. I mean, I have no idea what it's going to do. Do you find yourself frequently using those profiles? Like when you're editing a RAW, are you typically editing it from scratch and just sometimes you're saying, I'll apply classic chrome to this? Or is it like most of the time you apply the film simulation and then tweak it from there?
Always. I have Lightroom set to use the camera profile that I shot in.
I see.
And so it will always be in the original profile that I shot with. And then I will edit from there, or I may change it to a different film simulation. I almost never switch to Adobe Color or Adobe Landscape Color or use the Adobe Color profiles. They do look nice. Like the Adobe Color profiles are good, but I shoot Fuji. And so I'm like, I want the Fuji colors.
I mean, you'll just have to try it, but I would think it would save that. I mean, especially if it's a lossless conversion, you would expect it would take all the EXIF data with it and all that stuff. But
do you think this is a reasonable thing for me to do, to add this whole new step into my editing workflow?
I definitely hear a lot of people talking about it. I think the argument about being able to use like the AI denoise and the sharpening and stuff makes a lot of sense. It does seem like some of those things act weird with the Fuji files, and those are like pretty big features of Lightroom.
Well, to be clear, those features work absolutely fine. Like I can select an RAF file and I can do upscale or AI denoise or whatever.
But you just feel like the results aren't
and the same. When you do that, it converts it to a DNG in the process, which is where I really started to make the notice between of like, here's file A, here's file B. I did AI noise reduction in this file, and now it's a DNG file. When I apply sharpening, they react differently.
I see. So then why not just keep doing that? Why convert them all to DNG?
Because I don't want two versions in my Lightroom library. I don't want to then have to do AI noise reduction or upscaling or something weird in Lightroom in order to do it. I should just do the conversion off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you can find a way to do it cleanly and easily on the iPad, I think that makes sense. And it seems like it would probably be a better system. Like you're using Adobe's own files and their own software. It seems probably better, but I'm curious if you'll be able to actually get that to work well on the iPad.
I don't know.
I feel like the iPad right now is like the bottleneck of all your problems.
Clearly, I don't think there's a Adobe sanctioned DNG converter app on the iPad.
Oh.
I honestly haven't looked, but
yeah.
So are you in support of? It sounds like you're like just don't care.
I think it just depends on, like, I think you have too many unanswered questions to really say. Like, I think it's a good idea if you can get all these things to work, but if it adds a lot of friction to your process, then it might not be worth it.
I guess that's going to take some experimenting. I'll have to find an app, do some conversion, and then try to cross compare the two files and see like how much latitude do I still have with the files, and like do they react the same, and are the colors the same, and all this sort of stuff. So I guess I will
experimenting,
do a bunch of testing, and then report my results.
Yeah, something to look forward to in a future week.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
You know, I complain about Lightroom like one more time. You can't even do the AI noise reduction stuff on the iPad.
Really?
You can't do side-by-side photos. You can't look at one photo and two things. You can't create a digital copy of a file to make two different edits on it on the iPad. Why is it so much worse?
Yeah, they really need to work on that.
I just want the good version on my iPad.
For a lot of people, the iPad might be the best quality monitor they have.
Yeah.
Like, it's very possible that that's the case. And yeah, it's frustrating that the software feels so limited. It feels like you're getting like the free mobile version sometimes when you're using the iPad one. It's like, no, this is as expensive as a computer, and it's as powerful as a computer, and
it's just
give me all the things.
Let me have all the features. They have the features. It's in the computer version. Just like, come on.
just come on.
That's all. That's everything I want to complain about.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.